My name is Charlie Keller, and I'll be Fallon's Daily Toast today. Fallon is not able to be here this evening. I just wanted to introduce our guests here. We have Scott Gilbert of the organization Refuse Fascism. So we're going to just get right into the main topic of discussion for the show. Thank you for being here with us today,
My pleasure.
Scott.
Thank you, and thank Fallon, whoever she is, for inviting Refuse Fascism and myself.
So what led you to start becoming very active with the Refuse Fascism organization?
That started actually 50 years ago. I was growing up. My mother and grandparents were Holocaust survivors. And I was reading the diary of Anne Frank, and my mother had massive PTSD and never talked about any of the stuff that happened in Germany. And she walked away and then came back a few minutes later with a picture of Anne Frank and my mother playing together when they were little kids. And I said to her, as little kids do, how did the German people let this happen? I was stunned. I couldn't grasp that. And I remember saying to my mom then and there, never again will I allow this. I will not be a good German. And here we are 50 years later, and the Trump-Pence regime got elected into power through due process, the very same way that Hitler did, due process. And so we've put out a national call for November 4th. This nightmare must end, and the whole Trump-Pence regime must go. And we'll be in the streets day after day, starting on November 4th, then again November 5th, then again November 6th, then again November 7th, until we can drive all of these fascists out, the whole cabinet. Each in their own way is very scary, from DeVos to Mattis to Sessions to Curtis to Mattis, all of them, especially Pence, who's a Christian fascist, a theocrat,
Sure.
who believes in the Bible literally. And so, as my t-shirt says, in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist regime, and very much want to get that out there. The media has actually, for the most part, been blacking this out. So thank you very much, Charlie, for giving us the opportunity to get this out there.
Yeah.
It's exceptionally important. And this is national, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that yet, but we're talking about a national movement starting in 15 or 20 cities and building, not in a straight line, and pulling others in who really see the necessity and see that this is a fascist regime. And if I could, I'd like to actually read. This was from the original call last December, 10 months ago. The call to action from Refuse Fascism. Fascism has direction and momentum. Dissent is piece by piece criminalized. The truth is bludgeoned. Group after group is demonized and targeted along a trajectory that leads to real horrors. All of this has already begun under the Trump-Pence regime. History has shown that fascism must be stopped before it becomes too late. That was written 10 months ago. Very salient and prescient, I think. In the last few weeks of the Trump-Pence regime, they've been subverting the separation of powers, the separation of church and state, called for a new nuclear arms race, demonized the press, dismissed the very concept of truth, substituting their own fabricated alternative facts. It can already be said of Trump-Pence that they came for the Muslims, then the Mexicans, and then all refugees, and then women, then Black and Latino people, LGBTQ persons, the environment, and anyone who doesn't conform or submit to their vision and plan for a nation cohered around white supremacy and a political form of Christian fundamentalism that should be rightfully called Christian fascism. And what is crucial to understand is that once in power, fascism essentially eliminates traditional democratic and civil rights. And so I try and imagine what it was like during Hitler's time in 1932-33, as he was ascending into power. And you look at the parallels between then and now. Abortion was free and on demand in Germany until Hitler came to power.
LGBT rights were celebrated in Berlin, Weimar era, Berlin.
In the Weimar Republic, exactly. And then one of the first things Hitler did was to abolish the rights for abortion. And what it really came down, women were lawyers, doctors, civil servants. The only thing they were allowed to be was either working in the factory or breeders, you know. For the
ultra traditional gender roles.
And we see that same stuff, you know, a prime example is this poor young 17-year-old woman, this Latino, who is in a prison in Texas. And she asked for an abortion. She found out she was pregnant. And the Trump-Pence regime immediately said no. And you look at her, she's a woman, she's a person of color, and she's foreign. And, you know, this was an attack on all those kind of groups of people. And, you know, we're seeing this over and over, or Sheriff Arpaio being given a pardon. That's what Hitler did in the 30s. He pardoned all the stormtroopers who were convicted of crimes, and some of them were supposed to be sentenced to death. Said no. And so this is the whole climate that we're seeing today with Charlottesville, which was a big wake-up call, I think, for a lot of people. You know, what's going on? And the history of the U.S. from its inception has been based on slavery and the oppression of black people and the genocide of Native Americans all the way through up to today. And so a lot of people have this, I think, incorrect view of American exceptionalism, that fascism can't happen here. That, yeah, it could happen in Germany or Italy or Argentina or what have you, but not here. And in fact, it very much can and is happening. And it's people, you know, we want to unite any and all organizations and individuals who unite around the single slogan, the Trump-Pence regime must go, all of them. And we can debate, you know, our differences, but if we're united around that, millions of people coming into motion is what's going to be necessary to stop this. Or at some point, as fascism consolidates its power, we can't even sit here and have this show. You know, and so every single day that the Trump-Pence regime does something, it normalizes. You know, you get the attack on DACA, you get the attack on Affordable Care Act.
Yeah.
And, you know, many people suddenly losing health care or having to spend incredible amounts. You know, the attacks on science, Trump basically saying, look, I'm going to annihilate a whole country of 26 million people with nuclear weapons. To me, millions of people should already be in the streets about that, saying, no, that's you know, a total crime against humanity, and we need to drive all of these people out. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, you definitely answered the question. Was there something else you wanted to add then there? Yeah, I mean, I think I relate to a lot of the points you make between the various outrages of the Trump regime, Trump-Pence regime, related to saber rattling, reckless, scary saber rattling with North Korea, the persecution of minorities, LGBT community, immigrants, black people. I think one observation I would add, connecting the experiences of both establishing commonalities between Weimar to Nazi era Germany and some differences. In terms of commonalities, I would suggest that in both situations, the country was going through economic fear and uncertainty, exacerbated in the case of Germany by like excessive kind of like debt related to the settlement of World War I.
The Versailles Treaty.
The Versailles Treaty. And the fact that there was like this kind of cultural tolerance and some degree of gender and LGBTQ equality. However, it was still a pretty vicious and harsh liberal capitalist economic order that created a lot of economic uncertainty and fear. And I think that you see that today with like the crisis, the growth of poverty and inequality, the collapse of the middle and working classes, and the growth of this like very elite economic class and a bunch of like struggling people beneath that. And I think like it's human psychology that like when you add economic uncertainty and fear, people become more kind of tribalistic and perhaps like open to fascistic ideas. So there's like this connection between the economic and the rise of socially fascistic ideas. And a good antidote, I think, to the political strength of fascism is to like combine this anti-fascism with like a socio-democracy or socialism, something that eases the economic fear at the same time as it like calls for multicultural acceptance and unity and anti-fascism.
I mean, I think that's a good point. One thing I would add, though, is we don't have that much time.
We don't.
You know, unlike the 60s when, you know, we spent years battling and fighting against the war in Vietnam and women's rights and civil rights, which is great, we could be talking months. You know, there could be some event and then martial law is declared off. And so there's these two windows right now. One, their window of consolidating fascism, and then the other window, ours, that do we still have enough time? Yes. But are we going to get it together in time to Pence regime out? And I think people really need to grasp, if they get that it's fascist, they need to step out and act now. We can't keep waiting. And it's a, you know, you raised it earlier, this whole point of, well, what do I do? Because a lot of people are feeling just smashed down.
And helpless and powerless. Yeah.
And that's how fascism works.
It controls people with fear and
day after day. And there are millions of us, not just the three of us, there are millions of us who are around the country who are completely outraged by what this regime is doing, but are also scared. And they don't see a way out. And we're saying we do have a way out to do this with millions of us, you know, day after day till the whole political climate is shifted. That's what we need to do. We have to shift the political terrain and the climate so that people don't feel scared by stepping out. You know, there was this up in Gloucester just this last week, a principal, they had at their local school a game of Tombstone, okay, and they had different names on the tombstones, and one of them had Donald Trump. And so the Gloucester Republican Party denounced it and demanded an apology from the principal, which was given. No. People ought to be able to do that stuff, and we need to change this whole climate so that they can't, you know, keep running out what they're doing and step by step consolidating. It's by people not doing something, we are all normalizing that. We've got to realize that, you know, we cannot accommodate them. And I'll give you an example. He talked about, or actually did, bomb Syria, right? Several months ago.
Yeah.
And what was the Democratic Party's response, including Elizabeth Warren, the most liberal? It wasn't, that's a crime against humanity. You didn't ask us permission from the Congress. That's how far things have shifted. People need to say no. We need to call out everyone, but not just to criticize, which there are a lot of groups out there doing great work, from environmental groups to groups supporting like Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. But it can't be just criticizing. We have to recognize we have to drive them out. They must go. That's, you know, and until we do that, all the rest of the stuff we're doing is only going to go so far.
Well, I think when you guys are talking about, it's very depressing, right? So I've known a few people, I think they were kind of more like Hillary supporting folks who, they were so surprised that this happened. They were so surprised at the country. I think, you know, Saturday Night Live had this skit about these white liberals. They were very, there were like two black men there. They weren't surprised at all that Trump was elected.
Yeah.
I've seen the skit, like, and all the white liberals were like, yes, finally. And they were shocked. Not my country. This isn't my country. But, you know, unless you've been living in a bubble, I think a lot of Americans have been living in a bubble. This strikes a lot of our DNA about how it's so easy for Trump to arise. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the thing is that, you know, this depression, like I've run into some of these folks, they're so depressed after the Trump election. Mm-hmm. And I would be trying to inspire my friends not to be depressed. And I'd be like, but there's so many people out in the streets today. There's so many people that, but after I'd be talking to them, I'd be thinking like, to be honest, I am really depressed about this as well.
And you should be.
And we should be depressed, but we can't just wallow in the depression. I think, so your instincts are right. We have to use that anger and sadness to try to build something better and counteract what's causing it.
What the thing is though, I mean, I think what you guys are kind of tapping into is this aspect of depression, right? This sadness, it is a very, you know, prime place for fascists to come arise, because people are like kind of mopey and like it's not my country anymore, and what happened, I used to be like entitled to a job and a big house, when I was the head of my family, all this kind of stuff. And in this
but that's still mainly white, what you've described.
It is heavily, we're talking about heavily white, and we have to acknowledge that a lot of the support for Trump, upper middle class white folks,
Right, it's not just the poor.
But the thing is, like the media's been saying it's populism. Like Bernie and Trump, they're like two sides of the same thing. They're both populists. And it's because like a lot of these media commentators are really ignorant of political terms, and they don't understand that he's an irredentist. This word, so this is like an aspect, irredentism is an aspect of fascism of, there was this mythical old time, and I'm bringing it back. He says, make America great again, and you have people like Hillary who are so tone deaf, they say America was always great,
That's a very good, really good point.
Because when, I'm just talking for a little bit, I'm sorry, but I want to say is like, we have to do both. We have to get Trump and Pence out. They're dangerous, but we do actually have to create a society where people are inspired, because Trump isn't the only shiny game in town saying, I'm going to fix it all. You know what I mean? And so we can't say just right now, and we can't say we have to do them both at the same time. We don't really have an option where we could say, that's all I want to say.
Yeah, like we need this inspiring like city on a hill vision, but instead of it being this like fake good thing that's actually deeply dark and sinister, actually make it inspiring and positive and real about like multicultural inclusion and like broad economic equity and if not equality, and like being in this together, taking care of everyone, making sure that we do right by one another.
Because you're talking about people that are like, there's so many, and I did a previous show on Fallon's thing about how it's so annoying how people debate why Trump, and are they racist or is it economic insecurity?
It seems like it's both, but
right. But
it's much more than that. That's the difference. You had Obama, who a lot of people don't know. More people were mass incarcerated under Obama than right. More people were deported under Obama than in previous president. But there's been a qualitative leap from that to fascism now, and that's what people have to grasp. And if they get that, they get the necessity of seeing that, then opportunities and possibilities open up. Okay, I see what the problem is. It's sort of like a person having cancer. Once you grasp, wait a minute, if I don't cut this whole tumor out and then do some radiation, this body's going to die. If we don't cut this tumor out of fascism, and the body's going to die. And it's, you said, make America great again. I just want to make a side comment on that. Hitler's slogan was make Germany whole again. I mean, it is. It's textbook.
It's textbook.
And
it's all about glory and power of like whatever your
we were a great
group
people,
is.
And obviously American exceptionalism, it ties into that as well. We're supposed to be. We have to acknowledge like there is. Multiculturalism is very upsetting to these people who believe, that they're, how dare, these people, they're not white.
They associate America with whiteness, even though there's nothing inherently white about it. It's about.
Well, the elites are majority white.
There's a power base of whiteness, but there's nothing like on paper that is like essential to our country that's white. It's about like. It's supposed to be about like universal human rights and freedoms and like inclusion for immigrants from all around the world as like being welcome here in like a unique and beautiful way.
But that's not true. I mean, when my mom came over on a boat,
it actually is, and it's not at the same time.
Because in 1941, everyone that was on my mother's boat came into Ellis Island. They turned that boat around, and most of them died.
Right.
And only because of the connections my mom had did she get off the boat with about 6 families. This again, that American exceptionalism, and if it would be okay for a minute,
you want me to show the site?
Yeah, people should know about the site, refusefascism.org. They should check it out. It's a national site. This is the broadsheet, November 4th. It begins. This nightmare must end. The whole Trump-Pence regime must go. And go onto the website, check it out, endorse it.
I'm sorry, we're having there's a little technical thing we're dealing with here. I'm sorry.
Okay. Use the social media, email your friends, tweet your friends, Facebook, all of it. That it's really, really important that we spread this because the media has been blacking this out. And there have been some great actions from LA when they shut down the freeway, to these night shots on buildings now about November 4th, and where we're going is what you were said, the necessity to fight for a better future for humanity. That's what we're about, and I'm sorry, were you able to get it up?
We had a connection issue. What I can do is
Well, if I could tell the listeners, refusefascism.org.
I'm sorry, I'm going to try to get some technical assistance about
All right.
this.
Okay.
And we'll keep talking. It's... What was I going to say? Another way I think we need to look at it is these are abnormal times, so we can't act in normal ways, let's say waiting for the 2018 elections. These are,
Right.
We must act in ways that are commensurate with what time it is, and people have to grasp that. And, yes, we'll work with Democrats or anybody, but if we wait to 2018, we might not be sitting here. People have got to realize this, the whole step-by-step way fascism consolidates power. Thank you very much, my friend, for helping us fix that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's something about the apathy of American democracy sometimes, where people just take for granted that we're this great democracy, and they think that the elections work kind of on their own. And we should probably take a page from an example you brought up recently before we started taping of South Korea, where they Catholicism kind of fueled popular social movement, helped push out a right-wing president who was, I think, doing a lot to rip up the social welfare state, but I'm not quite sure exactly what else. But in any event, there's a lot of examples of peer countries, liberal democracies, that kind of have much stronger protest movement traditions. If you look at Quebec, they raise tuition by $400.
France.
They have hundreds of thousands of students in the streets. In France, there's a much stronger strike culture, and I think what that does is it elevates a democracy that's kind of just formal and on paper to one that's much more functional and real in terms of the power relations of society. And yeah, I think it can be done. And all those people in all these peer countries, I mean, they still have their own private lives and responsibilities and families and mortgages and whatnot. And there's a way to multitask these things. It's not an unrealistic expectation. And yeah, it may be more work, but it's satisfying and rewarding knowing that you're standing up for the right thing when it matters, in a strong sense of community, belonging, solidarity, connection. I think there's a lot to be gained from really making that extra and participate in these movements.
Well, if it's okay, I want to speak about three things. What are we calling for? Why it's important, and then how can we do that? And what a movement of people from diverse perspectives united under that one slogan I said before: "This nightmare must end. The Trump-Pence regime must go." And there needs to be a qualitative leap in our work, where the real breakthrough, so we do change the and why? Look at all. Someone said to me, "Well, Scott, aren't you too extreme?" And someone else responded to that and say, "Extreme? Well, what has the Trump-Pence regime done for 11 million Latino descent?" Right? He's basically said, from that step to the next step to setting up concentration camps, right? And there's a great play out called Building the Wall, if people should know about and see if they get a chance to, of looking at 2019 back when the Trump-Pence regime declared martial law and actually set up camps and thousands of people died. But all these crimes, the crimes against the LGBTQ community, 431 laws have been changed in all these presidential executive orders that are just stripping away step by step. And Neil Gorish, who is this guy? He's another theocratic fascist. And they basically control all three parts of our government now.
Oh yeah, they have the trifecta.
They have the trifecta, and so we cannot rely on going through Congress, right?
Just one or two Supreme Court justices. It's like, what will Anthony Kennedy say today?
Yeah. Everyone who is in a position of power in the government is in such a position of privilege in our society anyway that they're not going to bear the brunt of these persecutions or inequalities and injustices. So they don't have that much personal stake in fighting it. They may fight to an extent out of sympathy and empathy, but they're not going to put in the same level of effort as those who have a direct stake in it.
It's like a factory for millionaires. Like if you're not a millionaire when you go into Congress, you're probably going to be a millionaire pretty soon.
Which I think kind of explains like the Democratic Party's half-hearted defense of social justice principles and human rights. I think that they can be an ally and they can do some good, but we have to build a real powerful grassroots left. We don't really have a true left represented in the country. We have a far right and a center.
Right.
But not a
who believe that
left.
there are these heroic progressives.
Yeah, just by virtue of not being like nearly as evil as the other side.
But by being better than stepping over the lowest pole possible.
Yeah.
It's like you don't even have to worry about tripping over that pole.
Even like someone like Bernie Sanders,
isn't even that radical.
And look what he did when Trump came to power. He didn't say, this guy's a fascist and we got to get rid of him. He said, well, I don't agree with him with some things, but I'll work with him when it's coming to the infrastructure and building bridges.
He and Liz Warren have said, we'll see what we can work on.
Right, and that's
other times
we have to recognize we have to
be
rely on
fair,
ourselves.
they thought at the time that he might have been not completely lying about some of his economic populism and helping working class people. I think that it was a bit naive, but I think they were just trying to work with him on a few things that actually were good while sticking to principles, anti-fascist and progressive social principles on a lot of other stuff. So I don't think it was a total betrayal. Maybe it wasn't as vigilant as would be ideal, though.
We don't have anywhere near as much as we want. If we sincerely believe that Trump is a fascist, our politicians are not behaving like that much. And many of us on our social networks are not behaving like that. We're just many of us are going along, as if things are normal. Coming up to the election, it was like Hillary was the only person who was protecting us from new Adolf Hitler. So many people say you either vote for Hillary or you're evil or you're apathetic. And now many of these people are just we've gone back to life as normal. It's just like before the election. Oh, can you believe how offensive it is what Trump said today on TV?
I think it goes to show like the bipolar nature of America. We have this like formal democracy and set of rights, including free speech and many other political rights. On paper, we're not a fascist country, but fascism is a massive, powerful force in this country that's been around for a long time, whether it be in terms of like racial supremacy of Jim Crow era or like the kind of fascistic like homophobia or like the anti-immigrant attitudes. And all of those are I think they're still powerful. They're just kind of dressed up in nicer looking clothing and language and there's a lot of lies and concealing of fascism within the context of a so-called democracy.
Well, I mean, we can get into the whole question of what is a democracy. Some of us would say it's a capitalist democracy and we need to get rid of capitalism. Some of us want to get back to the old ways where people thought they had freedoms. But the main thing is we need to focus on this is fascist. This is fascism we're seeing every single day consolidating.
I don't disagree with that. But what I'm trying to do is maintain credibility with an audience that sees, as Matthew was saying, many of our rights and freedoms continuing because they're legally protected by the Constitution. I think what we need to understand is that just because we have these formal elements of democracy doesn't mean that like pernicious forms of evil and fascism don't find a way to persist undercover within that context.
But they're not even undercover anymore.
I think that they're not quite undercover anymore in some ways, but a lot of them are still undercover, and they have been here for a long time undercover.
Well, when we talk about the Nazis basing so much of their racial codes on the South, you and I were talking about Doug Henway on Behind the News. He did a program about it recently. Some of the stuff the Nazis took a look at what we were doing in the South. Some of the stuff it was too much for them. They're like, not even we're not even that racist. You know what I'm saying? It's been part of our DNA to have a white supremacist society here, to dominate people, and especially to use, you know, racial codes and stuff for a lot of economic exploitation.
Yeah.
And so it's, for me, it's kind of concerning. Is like, for some of us, like, you know, I'm a Jew as well, and so a lot of us, you know, we sometimes see like, you only have to change a few things in American society before this fascism, these racists rear their ugly faces again. And I guess I think that's possibly what we're talking about, is we want to kind of get Trump and Pence out, but where I guess I'm concerned is that another Trump at 25 years from now or something, next time we have another major, you know, depression or something, or recession, that's, I think we really, really, really have to address, because a lot of liberals, I mean, that's one of my issues about why I don't necessarily just want Trump impeached, is because a lot of liberals and a lot of Republicans, we did it, we're all good, you know. And then Pence doesn't offend everybody like that. Pence is going to be able to get a whole lot of, you know, he is like, I think he's a sincere theocrat, whereas I think Trump is a faker about being a religious, you know. And so Pence could potentially do a lot worse, because we're going to rest on our laurels thinking, well, we kicked out Trump and Trump was just so offensive.
Well, you're right, and that's why we have to drive home to people. It's a very good point that our single non-negotiable demand is drive out the Trump, Pence, and the third word, regime.
Yes.
We've got to drive them all, and you know, that can happen. You know, where if they're driven, even the top two driven out, their cabinet goes with them. You know, many of them.
How does this actually work within the confines of the U.S. Constitution? Would it have to be a revolution whereby we install a new constitution for this to happen, or is it possible to drive them out within the existing constitution? If we were to drive them out within the existing constitution, wouldn't there just be another Republican who came into office? Like,
it could be. I mean, it so much depends on. It's our responsibility to change the political terrain. That, you know, you look at 1973, and they were talking about, you know, getting rid of Nixon, right?
Yeah.
One of their biggest problems was, if you got rid of Nixon, you would have gotten Spiro Agnew.
Yeah.
So what did they do? They got rid of Spiro Agnew first, then got rid of Nixon.
So we go after Pence first.
But it was, the ruling circles saw a problem here, and so their way to solve it, and then put in Gerald Ford and all the rest of that, that might be one answer. I mean, no matter what, if we get people in who are non-fascist, that's huge.
But I just think that the entire Republican coalition is itself fascist. And I think the entire Republican coalition, or not entire, but much of the Republican coalition, is particularly as defined by the rise of like populist right Trumpism, is kind of inherently fascistic.
They've been milking these fires for decades.
So if we don't have Trump, if we don't have Pence, then whoever replaces them will likely be pursuing the same kind of policies that vilify and make enemies of perfectly fine, normal people who deserve equal rights.
That's one possibility, but there are other possibilities.
I think what we want to say is that I think a lot of people say, well, Trump, the Republicans would never turn on Trump. They never, because he's a Republican, and they're Republicans. I'm like, no, they're politicians. And all you really have to do to show politicians is, this is going to hurt you, you know, if his approval, and you're going to get dragged down. Right now, unfortunately, a lot of Republicans who voted for Trump, they still think he's doing a great job. And the politicians are just going to look at the
There's some stepping out. I mean, look at Corker. Right.
That's right.
John
He's
McCain.
not running for
some
election.
of them, right?
It's only the people with no personal political stake.
They say, I'm not running anymore, so now I can write a book about how bad
it's
Trump
starting
is.
to crack. There are cracks that are going on. That's what we have to recognize. The political
it's
terrain
good.
is you know, it's starting to change, but it can't get there without, you know,
There's nothing
thousands and millions.
inevitable about it.
Right.
You know?
I agree. You know, and whether it ends up being a constitutional crisis and or a revolutionary situation, I mean, you know, somebody said, well, what about it being a civil war? I don't have the answer of what it's going to look like. There, you know, it's not written in stone.
We certainly don't want a war.
But, you know, but where we're heading now is worse than anything that we could put in its place.
I agree. I think
it could actually get worse. I think a civil war
it could get worse.
Much worse.
But if there's such mobilization, people really are mobilized, you're going to have a lot of politicians. These Republicans, you think they're the biggest Tea Partiers, they'll flip on a switch.
Yep.
They will flip on a switch.
It's all about
them,
so they don't have.
They're not going to be like, oh, you know, there's these giant movements. Well, we can't, you know, they're just going to, you know, they're politicians. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, very few of them, I think, are sincere.
Yeah. No, it's all a lie for power.
We do have to mobilize. We have to mobilize, and we say this is not negotiable.
I'm not saying we don't mobilize, but we have to be careful because there are a lot of potentially unintended consequences. And,
I agree.
And like, it's just so complicated.
That's why I don't want necessarily Trump impeached.
Yeah.
And then Pence is there because, like I was saying to somebody, everybody keeps saying, well, you can't, George Bush right now, majority of Democrats right now approve of George W. Bush. And I'm like, are you people insane? Do you remember what happened? And
Is that really true?
Yes. Yes, it was a poll that
What
came out.
amnesia? Oh my God.
I know, but like that's what because Bush he criticized Trump the other day because so much of what people are upset about is Trump. What he says is so offensive. Oh, he's so offensive. He's so offensive. That's what MSNBC is always playing on the TV and CNN. They're not talking about his legislation. They're saying about what he did. What's so offensive. And so like Pence wouldn't offend everybody, but the thing about the Democrats is like I was saying the other day. Until today, George W. Bush and Hillary Clinton have vastly much more blood on their hands than Donald Trump. You understand? Vastly much more. And so that's kind of what we're dealing with. I mean, I don't know if perhaps I was going somewhere and I didn't realize I found.
I think you're driving at a really good point because what I hear you saying is we can't rely on them. We have to rely on ourselves. We have to take up the responsibility of our thousands and pushing other people, and saying, look, this is what's got to happen day after day, night after night, and creating this kind of...
Trump has been so...
We can't be so easily fooled by superficial PR campaigns like that of George W. Bush to resurrect his image after one of the worst, historically inept and disastrous and immoral presidencies. Like, we have to have higher standards and know that that who we're contending with in the American elite are deeply ruthless and deeply dishonest people who we can't trust
very
whatsoever.
little moral foundation.
Yeah, no, the way they got to their positions was by having no soul and no moral foundation, but by presenting a moral image. They're deeply, deeply, deeply fake. So like we have to stop falling for it and that's my point.
But we agree. You said you want to have, you were going to say what, three things? I didn't know if you want to start now with the website.
I think it would be great if we could go to the website and give people a hit off of what exists nationally and also people internationally. We run into a lot of people from Europe and other places who meet us on the street and say, we had no idea that you guys existed. This is great.
Really,
it's giving us, some hope. Because many people around the world, most people around the world, look at what's going on in the U.S. and they're just shaking their heads.
And they think everyone's behind it.
Right.
And so, how could you guys elect Trump?
So, Refuse Fascism is putting out a poll and uniting with all who can be united around that slogan. And people should check it out. Check out maybe you could bring up a couple of things. These are the cities that people are going to be already have organized to be out on November 4th and the days after.
This looks good. I'm just going to click on this right here, November 4th. What you want me to, events, where to be November 4th?
Yep. Excellent.
Okay, so we got this. It looks pretty.
Yeah, if you scroll down, Atlanta.
Austin, Boston, Chicago, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Honolulu, Los Angeles, New York City, Omaha, Philadelphia, Pittsfield, Portland, Salem, Oregon, San Francisco, Seattle, and Tucson, Arizona. So if you're in any of those places...
And are you trying to add more?
And if you're not in any of those places, do one of two things. Start a chapter in your city or come to one of these cities and join us day after day, night after night. What you're saying is really important. But wherever you are, we don't have control of this stuff. We want people in their millions to take up driving out the Trump-Pence regime. Yeah. It is not just a refusefascism.org thing.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Everyone, whoever in any way they can do it, help to bring this down is really important. And there are a few other things. There are some different,
go
on the beginning websites, links to videos and speeches that have been done for people to really dig into what this is about.
You have it in Spanish as well.
Yep.
Okay, so where would the videos, perhaps here in news?
Yeah, or you could look at featured, which is neat because then it tells you what's been going on in other cities.
Excellent.
Okay.
Just as a quick interjection, I know in Boston, the May Day Coalition, a broad coalition of many different groups, including the Democratic Socialists of America and other radical and progressive organizations, has endorsed the November 4th action. So as you were saying, this is something that isn't just about self-consciously anti-fascist groups, although it's about any any groups on like the sort of center left and left sides of the coalition that are against fascism, whether that's the main purpose of the organization or like a secondary purpose. I think we all have a strong stake in it. Socialists, anti-fascists, liberals, progressives.
No, you're right. I mean, there's many people in the religious community who step forward. There's a great video of Father Carey talking about from Los Angeles, the attacks on the immigrant community and why people in the religious community need to step up. A contradiction that people face are many progressive people work in nonprofit organizations.
That's right.
The 501c3.
Yeah.
And so a response we get is, well, we think what you're doing is great, but we cannot endorse it because we don't want to lose our non-profit status.
Sure.
Which is kind of ironic because it's only the people with the profit status
right.
that get to say what they want to say.
Well, they can still endorse through not their work entity, through their private,
Exactly. That's what
as an individual, as
yes.
part of an organization.
That's a really good point, and that's what we need people do, going online, and you can scroll down, read the call for November 4th, endorse it, donate. We want to get a large ad out in the New York Times. It's cost like $50,000, I think it is. Mm-hmm. We're over halfway there. There are people who have quit their jobs, people who have left school, college mainly, and are working full-time in the national office in New York and elsewhere. But these people need money to live, to sustain them so they can keep doing their work.
Sure.
So even if you're not out there, but you can donate online.
Yeah. That reminds me of how, when I traveled to Washington, D.C. to take part in the occupations of Republican offices to get arrested fighting to protect the Affordable Care Act and fighting for Medicare for all. Some of us were able to do that, but it was a pretty rare situation where you're willing to go to D.C. at the drop of a hat and risk getting arrested. There are many other people housewives in the LA suburbs and any number of people in many different stations in life who sent money, who sponsored activists, who signed petitions, who offered donations in kind, whatever. So there's so many ways to get involved. Don't feel bad if you can't give up your entire life, but just do what you can, and it does matter.
You're right. And it's going back to the 60s, because of the mood changing, which a lot of people never thought was going to happen, right? It was, how many people were out there, say the United Farm Workers or the Civil Rights in '61 with the Jim Crow, when they went down on those buses and risked everything, their lives. It's hard to imagine putting your life on the line like that. The Freedom Riders, but yet that's the kind of risk that we have to all start thinking about doing, and it will inspire others.
Courageous and infectious.
Leonard Bernstein. Who's this guy? He's this composer and musician, right? And here, mainstream, and he started supporting the Black Panthers because he knew that the racial injustice was wrong. And actors, over the years, we need more of them stepping out. I don't expect probably Tom Cruise, but David Strathairn has. He's taken a formal stand to support November 4th.
They speak out in the award shows.
Yeah, there was some very good stuff, but it can't be just we need that, but it can't just be that.
I completely agree. The community, we really have to see it as a priority to stop them.
One vision I had was November 11th is coming, right? Veterans Day. What would it be like to see thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in anti-war marches on Veterans Day, including veterans? A lot of them have experience. They know what the real deal is and what happened in these different wars
no one hates war more than the warrior.
Yeah, and so, those having really creative ways to think about doing stuff, banner drops all over the country, all on the same day, or walkouts from work or school, calling for a national day for all high school and college, say, look, we're not going along with this, and how that can. It's going to be ebbs and flows. It's not demonstrated.
See, that's part of the thing is that the way that we have activism in this country, even the way that we talk about, I'm going to do this really obnoxious hand quote thing, strikes. We say a strike. We're talking about It's a day that people have collectively, they're taking off from work. But it's not like we refuse to go back to work until our demands are met. A lot of times activists, they just want to show. Listen, look, we're serious. You said this is how we're committed. And a lot of these walkouts, they happen one time, and then the students go back the next day, and then the administrators and everybody just wants it to pass by. And they just want to get back to normal, escape all the bad press. But I think that a lot of times it's just, if we're really committed to this, it's existential. Remember Bush? Remember Bush was saying this is an existential crisis we were facing, that these Islamic terrorists, they want to destroy our American way of life. And I'm thinking, well, if it's really us against this evil, then we should reinstitute a draft. I mean, if they're about to perish, the U.S., we can't just kind of be, oh, we'll send you off a certain amount here, but we don't want it to hurt us. But I think there a lot of times it's just how committed are we as Americans? And I think if we're really committed to driving Trump out, we have to really know that it's a sustained effort. It's not just like a walkout this day or that day. It's like massively, people are saying the workplace, it's dysfunctional at the school, it's dysfunctional here, and everybody just wants to get Trump out because society has been brought to a standstill. You understand what I'm saying? And until we can function, as, well, yeah, I don't like him, but he hasn't kidnapped my child yet. I still at least have Facebook and Twitter still. I could still watch this. Then I'm just saying it's going to be very, very difficult. I think, but at least as activists and organizers, we have to know that that's the kind of campaign that we're going to have to drive. It's sustained. Sustained.
I think it's important to be smart and sustainable about it. Everyone still needs money and needs to eat and needs these basic needs met, but we have to be able to balance that with acts of courage and tenaciousness politically. So definitely still be smart and careful, and society can't just collapse for the sake of activism, obviously.
It depends how important it is to people at the end of the day.
Well, it's just not a realistic expectation. People have needs. So.
I mean, that's what we could say as well. I mean, that's what I'm just saying. It's always...
Yeah, it's, look at the soldiers on the front in World War I, the Russian soldiers, and they'd be in the trenches in the cold in 1917, half starving to death. And they'd say, what's happening back in the big city? Did you bring books? We want to know what's going on. This whole kind of, the terrain had changed when the Lenin and the Communist Party came to power. Just, transformed, and even leading up to that, prior to that, the whole political terrain was in turmoil. And you don't know what's going to come out on the other side, but it's very important to create that. So that there are openings for other people to let this stuff debate. This kind of dialogue is very important.
Yeah.
But this kind of dialogue, I was at a Democratic committee meeting from a town nearby.
Oh, I feel sorry for you.
And it was really interesting because you had the gambit of these people, conservative to fairly radical.
Yeah, right.
All sitting in the same room in this, a suburb of Boston. And, we came forward and we said, we'll refuse fascism, and this is what it's about. And there started to be, it took over for the next 45 minutes, the meeting. And we were supposed to give a 5-minute presentation because it opened up the dialogue.
Yeah.
And, some people wanted to get back to us and did. This woman in her 70s was fantastic. She said, this has been the best meeting I've been to in years.
Really?
We're talking about some substance. And that's how we have to, in a much larger way, break this out, completely. There need to be whole qualitative leaps and breakthroughs in this being out there. And that's what we're hoping for on November 4th, because we don't know what's going to happen the next day, right? Is the media going to cover us? Are the police going to come after? Who knows? But that's going to create a whole new situation that keeps going. And I hope you two come and bring your friends.
Yeah, I plan to be there. And I guess, I don't know, I think that the urgency of this moment and the necessity of collective action in the public interest sort of challenges some sacred cows of American culture, particularly just our obsession with being comfortable and doing exactly what we want, and the individualism and kind of materialism, and just sort of I think the norm outside of engagements in public is just to kind of retreat into your own little enclave and your own little niche, because that's what the sort of like radical individualism and freedom of some parts of our country allows, and it's such comfortable. But like, and that like may feel nice sometimes, and I do get that, and I do it sometimes myself. But like, I just feel like it is an exceptional moment, an urgent moment. We have to start thinking about like sacrificing some things for a greater good, and then realizing that there also is a lot of like reward in being involved in these struggles.
Well, I mean, as far as we were talking about this idea of we can't expect people to forego, their survival and stuff like that. I don't believe that, everybody has to be part of, this mass action, but we do actually have to have a critical amount of people, that are in a sustained movement, that we can't be like a lot of times what activists get pulled into is we're protesting this month, and then we're protesting something else that month. And I'm not the only person with this critique, about how it's whatever. And sometimes we just kind of have to figure, what's the elephant in the room that's kind of responsible for all of this. And, a lot of it's the Republican Party, it's Trump. I think perhaps, I don't know how much I know Charlie and I, we would say capitalism. There's rampant individualism. That is an American exceptionalist idea, that how individualistic we are, that we're so free by what we consume at the vending machine and stuff like that.
Right. and like a radical me culture of what I want, rather than like a balanced idea of individuals. And some other societies that are similar to us, but not nearly as radically individualistic, like Australia and Canada, they have a balance between individual rights, because everyone's a little bit different, has a little bit different needs.
Unless you're Aboriginal.
And okay, that's another. That's a fair critique, but just for like the broad mainstream or whatever, they have like a better balance of community values and individual rights. And I think I just think it's a fundamentally, this is a little bit off topic, but I just think it's a fundamentally toxic way to view the world, of viewing the world solely through the prism of individual rights, because it just is inherently self-centered. That's
why we say in the
neoliberal libertarianism stuff.
In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept the fascist regime, because we're not talking about just people living here. What the U.S. government does affects the whole world.
Yes.
Right? It's the largest military power with almost 200, about 800 bases in almost 200 countries.
The whole world's watching. We have a responsibility.
And what happens in Bangladesh when that fire with all those hundreds of people got killed was, an American-run factory to
feed the American market's demand for fast fashion.
And we live relatively well off the sweat and blood of the people around the world, and it's horrific.
And Trump's recklessness could cause a war with North Korea that would lead to the deaths of probably millions of people in South Korea.
I actually said to my partner the other day, I said, I'm hoping that maybe the guy in North Korea is a little bit more rational than Trump.
It probably is. I mean, from the intelligence analyses I've seen, or not intelligence,
but it's more the question of what is their necessity? Why is Trump threatening North Korea? Because the U.S. empire has cracks in it now. It has competitors, right? It's got the Soviet Union starting to rise. It has China economically. What they could do in the 80s, 90s, they can't do anymore. So they have to really clamp down to try and take control to keep their whole empire going. And that's part of what's driving. You were saying, you're right, it needs to be sustained.
Yes.
I wish I could get more people to really grasp that.
Oh my gosh,
But there
it's
are
hard.
different ways to do that. Some people may come on Monday.
The future of capitalism, the bug. Everybody's working so much.
Yeah,
we don't have time to do civic.
At a certain point, people, if they see that necessity, they see the possibility, and some people come on Monday, some on Tuesday, whatever. Keep sustaining it in their different ways, whether they come in the afternoon and bring food, or, after work.
It's like a strike.
Whatever.
You have a lot of people who volunteer, they bring food, but as far as you're going forward with your thing, I want to know, I'm sorry, Charlie, if you already asked and I missed it, or I was playing with the computer, what do you want to see like after this? What are kind of like your expectations? After November 4th, and then going forward, like let's say like 6 months from now, where would you like to see us? I mean, ideally you'd already like to see the whole administration tossed out, right?
Right.
But I mean, as far as, as activists, when we make plans, we have metrics, like at this, or we should, at this point, we expect to be here, and if we're not, we need to kind of see what are we kind of missing that we're not where we figured we were going to be. I just want to know what when people are coming to the group, what should they be expecting to concretely they'll be working towards, the logistics of the organizing and stuff like this. I mean, like after November 4th, a lot of people, they go to conferences, like DC, and then they come back and they say they want to set something up. But then after the conference, a lot of these things, they kind of die out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, everyone says the right things, does the right symbolic things in the moment, but like it's all about the follow through. That's the hardest part. And like good intentions aren't enough. It has to be like an emphasis on follow through and competence and just effort, I think.
Well, again, it comes back to sustainability.
Yes.
We don't know what things take qualitative leaps. They don't go in a straight line, and they're going to be twists and turns.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like even with evolution, how there are suddenly these quantum leaps in how new species start. I can only take that so far, but meaning
based on the record about it.
Politically, some things happen and then they get reacted to, and we need to stay on task. Drive out the Trump-Pence regime day after day.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is I'm thinking you have like, I'm named maybe 20 or something cities, I don't remember. But I mean, I would just imagine that, maybe 2 months from now at least, assuming that Trump and Pence aren't driven out yet, you want to be in like perhaps 50 cities, and more capitals within each state. I mean, just kind of stuff like that. Perhaps you're looking for people to run chapters and say,
Well, again, that would be great.
Yeah.
But people have to see, we're putting out a poll, and saying this has got to happen. We can't just say impeach Trump, or we can't just do the good fight, or we can't keep doing just against environmental studies. We've got to all come together in our different ways, which it may step up in different cities that we have nothing to do with.
Exactly.
That's what we need. We need that kind of not synthetic, symbiotic. I'm the right word. Where it really grows on its own, and we saw that in the '60s. Where there were people having anti-war stuff going on that weren't part of MOB, the mobilization against the war in Vietnam and all of this. But you're right. The question is then, how do we sustain that? And that's what we need people to really
have milestones that we set with anything.
Yeah. I think this, I can remember so many examples from history. As you just brought up the Vietnam War example, there's also like the Occupy Wall Street example, that like courageous leading actors kind of speak truth to and stand up to power in a way that becomes a rallying cry for many others who privately or latently held those same beliefs, who then follow them out, inspired by the act of courage. Courage becomes infectious. Happened with the Stonewall riots in New York too. And that part, I think that people have been pretty effective in doing. So like I feel confident with the November 4th bringing out, inspiring other actions across the country. But yeah, like it's like I almost feel like almost all of our energy should be devoted to planning follow through, because that's the hardest part that we're not.
Well, there's a lot to be learned from ACT UP, how they did it, and they kept. But we need to do it in a much more concentrated way.